Welcome back to Gardner's History Garden's AP World History podcast. Today we're diving into the transformative period of industrialization and its far-reaching consequences. Imagine a world where factories hum with relentless energy. Steamships carve through oceans and entire continents are reshaped by imperial ambition. The Industrial Revolution didn't just change how things were made, it altered economies, societies, and power structures on a global scale. From imperial conquest to mass migrations, this episode will break down the major consequences of industrialization and give you the key insight you need for your exam. So let's jump in. The race for resources and markets fueled a new wave of imperialism. Why? Because industrial economies craved raw materials. Rubber from the Congo, cotton from India, and oil from the Middle East. European nations scrambled to claim territories, driven not just by economic needs, but also by political rivalries. Having an empire become a symbol of power and prestige. Britain, France, Germany, and even new players like the United States and Japan expanded their reach, setting the colonies and protectorates across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. But let's not forget the ideological justifications. Social Darwinism and so-called white man's burden provided a moral excuse for imperial expansion, portraying colonization as a duty to civilize non-European peoples. These justifications ignored the voices of those being colonized, who often resisted. The Sepoy Rebellion in India and the Zulu resistance in South Africa, and Ethiopia's stunning victory at the Battle of Adwa were all examples of fierce opposition to imperial rule. Think about this. How did industrialization enable imperialism? Consider how new technologies, steamships, railroads, and machine guns gave European powers the advantage. Take a moment to reflect on how the resistant movements fought back using different strategies. Picture this. A British officer stands on the banks of the Congo River, surveying endless fields of rubber trees. Meanwhile, in India, farmers are forced to grow cash crops like indigo and cotton instead of food. Across the globe, colonies were being reshaped to serve industrial economies. Railroads and ports were built not for the benefit of locals, but to funnel resources back to European markets. The Belgian Congo became infamous for its brutal rubber production, where forced labor and violence sustained European shifts. Labor systems also changed. While slavery was abolished in most places in the 19th century, indentured servitude took its place. Thousands of Chinese and Indian workers signed contracts, some willingly, others under duress, to work in sugar plantations in the Caribbean, railway construction in Africa, and mines in Southeast Asia. Though technically free, many faced conditions that were little better than slavery. How do you think economic exploitation under imperialism still impacts former colonies today? Consider resources, dependency, economic inequality, and global trade patterns. We're back here. With imperialism, some cultural exchanges, some intentional, others forced, Western education and Christianity spread across colonies, often erasing indigenous traditions. Mission schools in Africa and residential schools in Canada and the United States stripped indigenous children of their language and heritage. At the same time, cultural Cultural synergism emerged as traditions blended. Indian resistance leader Rabindranath Tagore wrote poetry critiquing British rule, while African and Asian societies adopted European influences into their own culture. But this wasn't just a one-way street. Asian and African art, food, and philosophy also found their way into Western societies, carried by returning global officers, trades, and migrants. Industrialization didn't just move goods, it moved people. Some left home by choice, seeking economic opportunities, while others had little say in the matter. Wars, famines, and economic hardships like the Irish potato famine pushed people out, while booming industries in the United States and in Latin America pulled them in. Asian and Europeans migrated in large numbers, forming ethnic enclaves like Chinatown in San Francisco or Little Italy in New York. These communities preserved their culture while adapting to new lands, but they also faced discrimination and restrictive laws like the Chinese Exclusionary Act in the United States. We know this is a lot to remember, so here are a couple memory tricks and aids to keep things straight for imperialism. For imperialism, think mercy. M-E-R-C-Y. M being markets, E, exploitation, R, resources, C, colonies, Y, your burden, as in white man's burden. For the ideas of migration, think pie. Push factors like famine and war, industrial economies needed labor, and ethnic enclaves formed in new lands. So how do you ace those test questions? Let's break it down. Multiple choice question tips. Be ready to identify motivations for imperialism, economic, political, and cultural. So again, remember that pie. Short answers question. A common prompt might be identify and explain one economic impact of imperialism. Use a specific example. For your a sample DBQ might ask you to evaluate the effects of imperialism on indigenous societies and compare perspectives. Expect causation questions like how did industrialization drive imperial expansion? Think about how railroads, steamships, and telegraphs made empire building possible. Let's recap real quick. Industrialization fueled imperialism, leading to resource extraction, resistant movements, and major cultural transformations. Global migrations reshaped societies, creating both opportunities and conflicts. The effects of this period are still visible today in economic dependencies, cultural blends, and geopolitical tensions. Thanks for tuning in to episode 6. Next time, we'll be looking at episode 7, where we'll tackle global conflicts in the 20th century. Again, look for the deep dives in on this episode. And if you liked, please like and subscribe. And stay tuned for our next episode. Again, keep studying and stay confident. You got this.